Hello, this is Jolie with Crochet Basics, and in this episode, this is a part 2 to the kids' mermaid tale for the Dolly and Me mermaid tales. And in this episode, I'm going to show you how to pleat the bottom of the blanket, and also one fin, how to do the bottom fin, the way that I did it, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you do, because I'm going to have another video for an alternative bottom fin, something more shapely. Okay, so let's get this going. And this mermaid tail, this one that I'm showing you in the video, I did a lot longer than the first one. So this one is 100 rows in, and it's way longer than the first one that I did. So now this is 100 rows in of shell stitch, and measured straight, it comes out to about 53 to 55 inches or so. But you know what? You always have to check your, I guess, gauge, your yarn, because some yarns are thicker than others and, can come out bigger or, smaller or what have you. So it seems like a lot, 100 rows, of shell stitch, but as far as it measures, pretty much every 2 rows of shell equals, approximately an inch or a little over an inch or so. Now, just so you know, this was done with regular acrylic, size 4 medium weight yarn, but sometimes the yarn is thicker. Like when you buy it, like say a pound of Caron yarn, it seems to be thicker than this. So I would use like a bigger hook. I would use an eye hook, and it would come out actually bigger. So for the adult one, that's what I did. I used a pound of Caron, well, more than a pound. But I used a pound of Caron, and I used an eye hook, which is a 5.5 millimeter size hook, an I9. And it came out bigger. It came out every 2 rows was close to 2 inches, pretty much. And it was, heavier than this, for the adult one or what have you. So, but, you could always, if you're unsure when you're doing, like if you're doing a swatch or whatever, you can always just measure. Use a measuring tape, because you can adjust it without a swatch. I very rarely make swatches. I very rarely make swatches. More or less, when it's regular acrylic yarn, I've been working with acrylic for since I started crocheting, which was like way long ago, So just so you know, just a side note or what have you, if you don't know that already. So I'm going to show you now. We're going to attach, we're going to close up the bottom and all of that kind of thing, and put a decorative touch on it. So if you have, these are perfect. These are stitch markers. And unlike regular safety pins, they don't have, some regular safety pins have a metal, well, they are metal, but they have, a circle at the bottom where it's, sometimes that can get hooked into your yarn and, snag it, get it, make a pull or what have you on it. Okay, and I still have the original stitch marker that was holding my spot for the very center of the blanket when I first started, what have you. All right, so what I'm going to do is fold it. I'm going to lay it flat. You see all my strings hanging out? I'm going to lay it flat and pin it. Now remember, this is the toddler, this is the kid one. That's why it's so narrow, but we're not seaming up the whole thing. So because we're not seaming up the whole thing, it's, it becomes more of a blanket. It's only going to be seamed up on the bottom, if I did not mention that prior. So I'm going to fold both edges in to meet my original stitch marker. Just as even as possible, and you can follow, you know, your stitch marker down, or you can mark it your center when you're doing your single crochet. So, but from here, let's see, let me move it up. All right, from here, what you're going to do is you're going to pin it so that you know where your center is, because we're going to pleat the corners, and a tape measure is always a wonderful thing to have at this point, just in case. Because either way, it's yarn, it moves, it shifts, and all that kind of wonderful stuff and everything, you know. So fold it across. I got approximately 22 inches across the whole piece or what have you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the center, and I'm going to overlap it. So I'm going through this side and then the very corner, the very edge, very edge. Your like your first stitch and your very last stitch, just to pin it in place so that I know that, you know, that's my center starting point as far as that's concerned. All right. There. Okay. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. So from here we're going to pleat this, and you know what a pleat is when you fold in so that it's more narrow on the bottom, and you can measure it, of course. And this is the hard part when you go through the 4 layers of the crochet. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, because we're pleating it. And you want to measure that and pin it and make sure. And also when you attach, unless you did it completely cockeyed, it's really not noticeable, you know, when it's done. So, but you want to try and have the pleats as even as possible, and try and make sure, not try, but make sure you catch all the layers when you're pinning it, and then even when you're going to close it up and crochet it, so that it's not, you know, you don't have like a little gaping hole somewhere or some kind of something. All right, but you're not really overlapping this. You're just going to catch both sides for now. You're not going to overlap that and for when you close it up. But just your very last stitch and your very first stitch on that row. Pinned down in the center. I think I'm talking too low. All right. So this will narrow out as we attach, and then we're only attaching about up to here. Sorry for the shadows. I got an overhead light and a light here, but I think I'm leaning over the table. So just like I was saying, sometimes the yarn is thick, you know, thicker, and sometimes it's thinner. This is a pound of Karen, and although it's, you know, so even though it's size 4 medium weight yarn, it's actually thinner than other skeins of yarn that I have made from the same company, what have you. All right, so anyway, we're going to close up the bottom here halfway, and I measured it. So both of my pleats are approximately 4 inches deep. So I don't know if the camera shows that. So just using my hands, you know, but I measured it too, just to show you with my hands. Okay, so make sure you go through all 4 layers of the pleat so that it's nice and closed off. So going in with the same size hook and my yarn, I'm going to attach on the corner, on the right hand corner. I'm right-handed, and it's just easier, you know, for me to go and do that way. Alright, so I'm going through 1, 2 layers in the corner, and then the next 2 layers, and I'm going to attach the yarn through all of it. Alright, and then from here I'm just going to do a simple single crochet, but make sure you catch all the layers of the pleat. And if you have a problem with it, you know, with crocheting it closed, you can always sew it closed, you know. I think, you know, sometimes it's hard to get through all of your layers and make sure that, you know, you're catching everything. Sometimes it's not easy, you know, it's thick yarn and all that kind of thing. But just try and make sure that all your you're catching every stitch at least once. And we're only going across this to the middle, and then we're going to go up and around to the front. Oh, and always, you know, if you want to reinforce that, that's fine too. You know, you might feel it's not strong enough or what have you. All right, so from here, you know, it's almost like you're making a like an envelope, but with yarn. So from here, I'm gonna finish this across just to the center, to my center stitch marker, and then I'm gonna start working up and around. But just to show you that I caught it through. So that's what that looks like in the fold inside of the pleat. Okay, and then make sure you catch, you know, your last one here. So you don't actually have to catch this side yet, because we're not really overlapping it as far as that's concerned. We're going to seal it later. And of course my pin comes out. So from here I'm going to turn the corner, you know, and start working up. And I'm just going to pin this back down to the front. So, I mean, if the pins get in your way, you know, however you seam it up, I'm showing you how I seam it up, of course. But I'm just going to pin it and leave it for now, just to hold it in place, because you are going to work all the way up and everything, and you don't want it to get in the way or whatever. You know, you'll probably have to remeasure again if that happens, you know, if you unpin it all or what have you. But not really too big of a deal. So right here where our center is, I'm just going to go in twice from the front to the back. I think I missed it. From the front to the back. Alright, and I'm just going to turn my work sideways and start working a single crochet up the edge. Now the trick with doing this on any project, when you're working up, you know, you don't want to put too many stitches in, and you don't want to short yourself, and because if you put too many in, it could, if you're gonna do another row, like it could fan out kind of a thing, like come out and like hang off or whatever, but not a big deal. But if you put too little, if you don't put enough stitches in, then it'll bind, and you won't have the same amount of stretch on the ends as you will the rest of the piece. And that goes with any project like this that you're going to seam on the edge where the chaining is and all of that kind of thing. So just always keep that in mind if you're going to do a border. And whatever you do on this side, do on this side. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go into, I went into the chain, and now I'm going into where a single crochet is, and then another like 2 across the chain 3 that we did on the edge, so that it's that's an approximate, you know, as far as that's concerned. But too little and it'll bind. You won't have, like, it won't lay totally flat. The yarn will be pulled very tight or taut, you know. So I'm just gonna, all right, I'm gonna be quiet now and just work around the edges. And then I'll probably time lapse this so that I don't eat up all your time with single crochet. Alright, so at this point I reached my corner, which is, you know, this is the top. This is the part that'll go on your waist or your chest or what have you. So when turning a corner, we don't want it to curl, so you have to add, you know, a couple of extra stitches in and what have you, just so it lays flat and every kind of thing, like that. Alright, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to do 2 single crochet into my loop, the starting loops that we made, which was chain 3 double crochet loops. Okay, so 1, 2, and then I'm gonna do a slip stitch, and I'll do 2 more single crochet, 1, 2. So just to turn the corner. If you were going to put a decorative edge on here, this is the top, so you would do this. This is what's going to go across your chest or your stomach or what have you. Or, you know, the kid. Whoever you're making it for. So right here, in our first, this is our loop from where we first started. That's our loop. So I'm going to do 7 double crochet, which is a big shell. It's a wide shell. And you could do crocodile or whatever, you know, whatever you want to do. If you don't want to do a decorative edge, you know, your choice, what have you. All right, and then I'll skip over to the next loop, which is here. And I'll do a single crochet. And then I'll just repeat that with the big shell, the 7 double crochet in one, and then the single in the next, all the way down. But when you do that, just make sure that you're catching in the loops and not in between. So just to show you, this is, you know, the stitch marker, which is the center stitch here. So we said we marked the 26th stitch. Now I'm going to leave this stitch marker in, or I'll move it up. I don't want to take it out completely. I always like to leave them in until I know I'm totally done crocheting, just in case if something has to be pulled out. You never know. Sometimes you realize, oh, I messed up and now my stitch marker is gone and boo-hoo is me, kind of a thing. Alright, so I'm at my end again, and we're going to turn that. So I'm going to go into the last one and do 2 single crochet, a chain 1, and another 2 single crochet. And then I'm going to start working down, you know, the other edge and attach towards the bottom. Sorry, let me straighten myself out here. All right. So that's actually supposed to be kind of on the curve and not on the top. But it'll get there, it'll get there. So I'm just going to work down again the same way with the single crochet. So, I mean, also another thing, a side note or whatever, you'll see that I still have my strings all here. And as I'm working, you know, I am crocheting around them, you know, and that just makes it a little easier when I weave them in. It takes a little time off. Not really, because, you know, who likes weaving in ends? It's such a pain in the neck, you know. Not I, that's for sure. But if it makes it a little bit easier to work around them, you know, before I weave them in, because I don't know if I know I've mentioned it before, if you weave them in sometimes, you know, as soon as you do them, if you're going to do a border, as soon as you cut off, if you're going to do a border, sometimes you'll hit into them, you know, your loose ends or whatever, what you weaved in, and end up pulling them out. And then that's a pain in the neck because you're reweaving and all that kind of thing. So sometimes it's just best to leave them to the very end and weave everything in at, like, you know, the last, when you're done, when you're totally done. All right, so you'll just continue on this, doing this with the border, and I'll show you what we're gonna do. But don't finish off your border totally, you know, don't go to the bottom just yet or any kind of thing, because we're gonna close up the bottom of the blanket of the mermaid tail. At this point, sorry, I'm trying to show you as much as possible, but I think unless I hang the camera from the ceiling, that isn't gonna happen. But as far as this is concerned, the border, and then sealing it up, I'm gonna crochet, gonna finish my border to about the hot pink, the hot pink, my dark fuchsia here. I know this is a fun one with all the pinks and the purples and such. No. Oh, here it is. All right. So, let's see. So just so you know, okay. So probably, is this 15 inches? Yeah, about 15. So, probably 15. I'd say 15, you know, between 15 and 20 inches off of the bottom, you know, from where you're sealing it up is where you want to start attaching it to the other side, you know, the two back sides. But let's, I'm going to show you anyway, so might as well just show you and shut up. Okay. You know, the reason I do it like this is so that you can get in and out of it. It's easier. You hopefully will not forget you're in it and, you know, trip getting off the couch or some kind of thing. Really. Because the first one I made of these for my niece, she's a little klutzy. And I thought about it afterwards and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have made it, you know, all the way like a tube. I said maybe I should have made it, you know, split down the back so that she doesn't trip out of the bed or any kind of thing and injure herself. Just saying. She knows I love her. But lay it flat. You know, when you get to the part where you're, the point and part mixed together sounds very funny. All right, when you get to where you're going to attach it to the other side. Okay, which is, you know, very low at the, towards the bottom, not high up, you know, just low enough, whatever. Easy to get in, easy to get out. All right, so what you're going to do is line it up, and mine is not straight whatsoever. Okay, fix that. As flat as possible, okay? Got my big arm in the way. All right, so, and you're just gonna go through your single crochet on this side, and then pick up your stitch on that side. So, I don't know if this is high or not, but, you know, anywhere between, like, say, 15 and 20 inches. Just really, like, the bottom part of it. So, and if you need to, you can go through twice. You know, as far as the single crochets or whatever, if you're not gonna do another row or any kind of thing. And I know I'm very serious in this video this time around, but these mermaid tails, I've been trying to film these mermaid tails for forever. Well over a year now. The first one I was making, I couldn't get it to come out right, you know? I was either putting too many stitches in, and it was bowing out like crazy, and it just was not looking good, like whatsoever. And then I realized if I made it more narrow and gave it more structure, that, you know, it would just flow better. And then they also take so long to make, you know. That's what my seam looks like so far. And it's really only, like, you know, on the bottom of the leg to where your feetses are. Because so that you're comfortable and you can get out and in and out and all that kind of thing, and hopefully not forget you're in a tube and trip and all that kind of good stuff. Because I wouldn't want you to get hurt on a mermaid tail. That would just be silly. So before you switch over to start closing up the bottom, just lay it flat again and make sure everything is lined up and all that kind of thing. Because don't forget, you're not pinned on one side. You're not pinned on one side, but you're still pinned on the other side. And as, you know, you're shifting your work and all of that kind of thing, it can adjust where you would be attaching. And just, I know this looks like gray in the light, but it's actually lavender. Oh, lilac, same difference. Shh, don't tell nobody. All right, it's actually lilac, but for some reason it looks like light gray in this lighting. Oh well, whatever. Anyway, so you're just gonna come down. You're just gonna make sure that you're all even still. Give it. And all that kind of thing. You're all lined up and all of this. Okay? And from here, you're just gonna switch over, and from working, you know, down, you're gonna start working across. And also remember with the pleat that you catch all your layers. So, and also you could sew. I told you before, you know, if you feel so inclined, you can sew it. You know, your choice kind of a thing. Some people would prefer to sew it, you know, and some people would prefer to crochet it because, you know, that's how that goes. So from here, you'll just go across, catching your pleat. So this is where mine starts. That's why I'm unclipping it, so that I could just go right through it. Just make sure you got all the layers. I know I keep saying that, but it's true. If, you know, if you go through and you don't have all the layers, you're going to have like a little hole there. And on other blankets, they call them a toe hole. I had never heard this before, actually. Oh, I'm very chatty all of a sudden. My mother-in-law had said at one time about a blanket she was repairing for another family member, and she said what happens is you get toe holes, so when you go to put the blanket on you, your toe gets caught in it, and then you end up ripping out the stitches, you know. Toe holes. One of those weird things you never hear. But it can happen, I guess. Okay, so once you get through here, you'll, you know, snip off, weave in, make a knot, blah, blah, blah. Whatever you want to do. And then we'll move on to making the tail and attaching the tail. So if I'm out of frame, hopefully, you know, anywhere in here, hopefully it's not for too long. It's not, I don't look through the viewfinder the whole time or the little screen or whatever you want to call it. I just take, you know, every so often I'll look through and make sure I'm still in frame, but sometimes I fall out of frame, so I do apologize for that, you know. So, but that's what it looks like. It looks kind of like an envelope, you know, with your two pleats, and that's what the innard of the pleat looks like. Shh, don't tell nobody. Okay, so from here, we'll get ready to make our bottom fin. So for the fin, for the bottom fin, now I've done it a few different ways, and I like it. I try to make it easy and all that kind of thing, but still, you know, look good and all that good stuff and what have you. All right, so what you need for the bottom fin is the color you're going to do it in, of course. All right, and the same size hook, an H5, US sizes, it's a 5mm, and a long piece of contrasting yarn. All right, and let's see, stitch markers are good. A measuring tape is always good, you know, just in case yours came out different and all that kind of thing. So I'm going to chain loosely, not too tight. Oh, and you'll need a yarn needle later on to sew it on. So I'm going to chain 45 chains. So this is half double crochet. So you're going to skip the first two chains, and you're going to do half double crochet for almost the whole row, actually. So let's see, 45 minus 2 is 43, so you'll do 41 half double crochets. So from here, the last two stitches, you're going to do a single crochet. And what you're going to do with your loose string, okay, so scraps are always good, you know, different size scraps and stuff like that. They save you on stitch markers and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to put it right in between my stitches, not, you know, and I'm just going to crochet right over it, not a big deal. So I'm going to do one single crochet in the last 2 stitches. I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, skip that chain, and do 1 single crochet in the first 2 stitches. Put my yarn, my loose yarn, over that, and then the rest is just half double crochet for the rest of the row. And what you're going to do, you're going to crochet in the back loops only. So the loops that are the side of the braid that is furthest away from you, okay? And you're going to leave the front loop unworked. And that's for the whole piece. You're going to leave the front loop unworked for the whole piece. All right, so I'm just going to go into one side and do my 1, 2, my first 2 single crochets. And you might not need the string as to mark it or whatever, but it just kind of makes it easier. And it also makes it easier later on if you lose count of your rows and you need to count them. Because sometimes it's hard to see where you where your rows are, where they, you know, where you move on to the next row. So for the rest of this row, you'll do the half double crochet in the back loops only. So you'll chain 2, you'll skip those 2 chains, and you can always go a hook size bigger. If it's curling too much, like if it's curling, it'll lay flat. You know, it should lay flat. There shouldn't be a problem. But if, you know, if you feel it's curling too much or whatever, you can always do your chain in a bigger hook, a hook size bigger or a hook size 2 sizes bigger. And that'll loosen up your chaining row, and that'll usually keep it from curling too much. So that's just a side note or a tip and all that kind of good stuff. All right, so but you'll skip over your first 2 chains, and you'll go in the back loops only and do your half double crochet until you get to your string or your last 2 stitches. And then you'll do the same that you just did to start the row. So, half double crochet. Then you'll flip your string and you'll work your last 2 single crochet. And you'll chain 1 and turn your work, and then you'll just repeat that. You'll repeat that 50 rows of this works pretty well. Width-wise, this is the top, so this will be sewn on. This will be sewn on to your tube, you know, the body of your blanket. And then this is the bottom of the fin, and we're going to do a border. But you'll just repeat that. And what did I say? Okay, 50 works good, but you can always go wider and longer and all of that kind of thing. You know, you can always adjust as you see fit. Okay? So just like that, and you'll see it'll, you know, be in and out for each row, you know, if you use the string method, the contrasting yarn. Okay, so just repeat that for, let's see, I just did 3 rows, right? So 47 rows, or, you know, 57 rows or whatever, you know, so that it's like, you know, 60 rows or 50 rows or what have you. 50 works pretty good. This is the smaller one. This is 14 inches across or something. Approximately 14 and a half, 15 inches across on this. So I'm going to shut the camera, and I'm going to continue this for about 60 rows, 50 to 60 rows. And then I'll show you how to do the border, and then we'll attach it. So now, just to show you, of course, because I love showing you stuff, this was the mermaid tail, the fin, not the tail, the fin, that I told you to use the string and feed it in and out, and then you'll be able to count the rows. You won't need a regular stitch marker or any kind of thing, and you also won't have to count pretty much where your 2 single crochets go, because you fed your string in and out. So now this was the first mermaid tail that I showed you without the pleating. It comes out flat as if it's a sleep sack, you know, just a flat sleep sack. If I could. So it just comes out nice and flat, you know. But it's the same thing. It's the shell stitch worked, you know, back and forth in a long, more or less a long blanket, and then seamed up halfway up the back side, just the bottom, so that the foot area was closed, so that we can attach our tail and have snuggly warm feet and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so this is, I did 54 rows on here, back and forth in the back loops only, half double crochet with on the top was 2 single crochet across the top. And this came out to, it fans out and it comes out to approximately 25 inches across. So what we're going to do here is what we did on the other one, the other piece. And if you like, you can pull out your string here, if you know, if you did it with the string. And if you, you know, hold it, support it, you know, don't just yank that sucker out, because you wove it all the way through, right? For each row. So it just comes out like so. And then from here we'll just put a border on it, and then I'm going to sew it on. It just seems to go on smoother with less of a bulky seam if it's sewn on. So, but I'm sewing it with yarn. I'm not sewing it with needle and thread or anything. Just a needle, a yarn needle or a tapestry needle, and then with the same color yarn. And if you don't have very long nails like I do, you can always hook your hook underneath and pull it out that way if it gets a little jammed up, or you can use a, you know, a needle and loosen it and then pull it. Not everybody has long nails such as myself. So you put your strap aside, your scrap yarn, and from here just a half double crochet down the row, and then in the corner we're going to do some double crochet and chaining. Okay, so just straight through 1 half double crochet all the way down the row. So you'll chain 2 and then work it. and I'm going through both loops, the front loop and the back loop for this border. And you can always do this border in a different color if you like, you know, as always. I think maybe I give too many options, you know, but I just figure, you know, however you decide it's easier for you to make, you know, that's always the best way. You don't crochet like I crochet, and I don't crochet, you know, I don't crochet like my sister or my mom or whoever, you know. So now I'm at my corner. And remember what I told you, you know, when turning a corner on a square, to get it to lay flat, you have to add extra stitches so that you can round the corner, more or less, you know. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do 3 double crochet right into my corner. So 1, 2, I'm catching over here, sorry, 3, I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to go right back in and turn that corner. I'm getting all tangled up, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this going and my yarn is fighting me on it. Okay, so you'll do, excuse me, you'll do your 2 chains, and then you'll go right back in where you are and do another 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, and then you can and then I'm just going to do back to half double crochet until I get to the next corner, so until I get over here. And remember what I told you or will tell you in the next video, whichever is going to happen. But when you're doing a cross where you crocheted and your loops aren't there, when you're going across and your loops aren't there, you know, you don't want to add too many and you don't want to add too little, because it won't have, if you don't add enough in, it'll kind of cinch up and you won't have as much stretch as the piece has. You know, it'll tighten. And if you put too many, which it doesn't really matter on this bottom piece if you're only doing 1 row, but if you put too many and you are gonna work more rows, it'll ripple out. So it'll, more or less, it'll fan out a lot more than it should sometimes. But just a half double crochet across the bottom. Alright, so I'm just going to do the same. I got to my other corner, so I'm going to do 3 double crochet, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, and go right back in and do 3 more double crochet, and then switch back to the half double crochet. For the rest of the border. Okay. Alrighties. So I'm going to cut that off, cut my tail, and here we go. See if I can hit the wrong button a few times, because that happens too. Messed up the last time. Hit the wrong button and I wasn't sure if I videoed or not and all this kind of thing. I was like, oh my gosh, totally just wasted time. Talking to myself, of course. Talking to myself in a room with a camera. Okay, so what you would do here, I'm going to snip off. If you wanted, you could have, you know, gone wider with that. You can always go around again, blah, 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 blah. All right, and I'm just going to snip off what I just did. Weave in that end because I don't need it. And then I'm going to get a needle. Easy peasy. Pin it on. across the bottom. You know, from corner to corner. And just a needle and thread. And, you know, a needle and yarn. And these these tapestry needles have a wider eye, and they are thicker. Or one of these plastic ones are good too. The thing with the plastic ones is that they do have give, and because they're wider, sometimes it'll make the holes wider. So if it's something like this or weaving in or whatever, I usually go for the metal ones. Just an FYI, or, you know, I usually go for the tapestry ones because they're solid, they don't have give, they're solid, and all that kind of thing. So it just, sometimes it just makes it a little easier to work with, you know. Alright, so you just pin this on, make sure it lines up, and then just go through, needle and thread. And I'm not going to sew it, I'm not going to sew this one on camera because it's always whatever. But I'll show you in pictures the finished, of course. And I don't know if this is part 1 or part 2 or whatever, but I show you 2 different ways to make this, the mermaid tail itself, and then, you know, the fin or what have you. I'm showing you this way. This way seemed to be the easiest for me. That came out even and all that kind of thing. So if you do make this, I hope you like making it. Let me know how it turns out, or if you have questions, if you have issues, blah, 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 blah. All that good stuff, you know, that I always tell you, and nobody ever gets back to me. And I'll be back soon with another video. I have a bunch of stuff coming. It's fall, and I have so many patterns. So many. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please ask. Please subscribe so, you know, you come back to me and see what other new stuff I come out with and all that kind of good stuff. If you do not crochet, and you like what you see, I have an Etsy's, I have an eBay, there's links below, there's links on my Facebook, blah, blah. And as always, happy hooking, because it keeps you off the streets, it keeps you out of trouble. And I'll be back soon, of course, with another tutorial. And I guess that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and have a super duper great day. And I'll be back soon. Bye now.